Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone around the world. I am Paul Sisler, and this is In the Moment. I apologize for the late start. We were having some technical difficulties because I got hacked on Twitter.
Oh
Okay.
no.
Yes, Twitter hacked me, and then our guest today, I had some troubles getting some the links sent and all that stuff. So we had some technical difficulties, but we are here now.
We
Now
made it.
we're here.
Woo!
Woo!
I would like to bring up everybody. We have T. Paul Wolfrick, the host of the Vellum, and our guest
Hey,
Joyce Smith, aka JJ, as we knew her on Twitter, and we are going to talk about her book today. So, Joyce, how are you doing today?
I am fantastic, Paul. Thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, it is a pleasure. And T. Paul, how are you doing, my good friend?
I'm doing pretty good actually, especially after my recent name change and recent identity shift. Like, it's it's so much more interesting and like just dynamic on the experiences you get when you're called by the right name, especially when you're given a name at birth and then like you're like, wait a minute, this ain't me anymore, and you spend like an entire like several months like not sure why you're getting dysphoria, not sure why, because I manage my emotions. I follow those stuff that Paul has even taught me about stoicism and stuff that Diana is imparted with like the spirituality and some of the stuff, because I will absorb information across the board and then I'll end up using as tools to help me help hopefully improve as a person. And they're serving self versus self-serve, that sort of thing, and better off like that. And I really like, so I spent like a good hour and a half reading your book, JJ. And
What?
yes, like I was dissecting it. I like to go into the prose. I like to go into like the sentence structure and overall just how the story is, and like especially if like I can relate to the story, I'll
Yeah.
like fly through it. If I don't relate to the story, don't connect to it, I'll just be like, yeah, it was a story or it was a book, or I could see what they were doing and I could see where they were trying to get at, because that's one of the things we do here as well as we talk about writing and the machinations of it and get into like what is a hero's journey or a heroine's journey, whether it's the masculine driven or feminine driven, and if there's a healthy balance of dynamicism, because I myself, do I have, I'm 50-50 femme, 50-50 masculine, which helps me with gym, but also helps me with being a dad, being able to pull back when needed to, and not just be like, "Ugh," like this is how life goes. Like, I'm very good at being able to, because like I dealt with that as a kid. I dealt with abuse. I dealt with all sorts of stuff. Everyone has a story about their childhood, but what I really liked about your story is how it's going into like the struggles that happened in the 60s and 70s. Like at certain points, I was like, what is real and what is fabricated to make it work for a memoir? Because like sometimes people will do that and they'll like come up with stuff or like little things that like, okay, my life in this part is not like a three-act structure. It's not like a typical movie per se, but it's my life. How do I make that work for a memoir or a story, or do I just not care about
Right.
structure? I just fly right ahead. And so you were going into racial trauma, which is a form of trauma. Like it's the amygdala senses pain, and it doesn't identify levels of pain. It doesn't identify, oh, this is that specific pain. Let me file it somewhere. No, all it does is it goes, ow, this hurts. I don't like this. This is extremely uncomfortable. What just happened? And then your brain tries to like sort it out, and then you try to regulate it. And from what I saw when you were a kid, when you're on like that bus and stuff with that lady, and she was just being like not good, not great. Like I was like going, well, did that really happen? Like, and I just was like, because of the fact that I grew up in San Diego, where
Oh,
you described it as, yeah, you described it as being, went to school and a lot of your school was segregated, which sucks because like that disconnects everybody. That like creates all sorts of tension there. And especially when you're a child, you don't even know what that means. You're just like, I'm a child and I'm trying to learn and blah blah blah. And so when she does that, and then like there's very key people, and I liked how you said I'm going to go into specific moments that are actually impactful, because a lot of people will just be like, I'm going to indulge and just go, here's me. And then suddenly out of nowhere, you're like, well, okay, so it's hard to sort this out though. So I liked how you went and you went in order of like, I'm not sure if it was levels of trauma or if it was just simply, I want to go into this, this, and this first because that's the most impactful and important. But basically, we're going to explore the carnal and visceral pains of growing up in the 60s and 70s, how life was like, and also how trauma is also rooted in racism, which is something that is important in our culture right now because there's a thing called systemic racism that I don't know if anyone's heard it before, but it's kind of terrible and it kind of destroys lives and it kind of like really like creates massive, I'm known for sarcasm, creates massive like things that caused JJ to write a book about it. And you know, and I myself, I was growing up, one of my favorite key figures was one of yours apparently, Martin Luther King. And I was not alive to hear the speech because I was obviously not born yet. But I do remember seeing video clips on it. And I do remember listening to him talk and wishing I'd met him in person. Like, let's put it that way. Like, I may not have the same pigmentation, but it still was heavily influential, especially with like my experiences growing up. And when I was in high school, you had 60% of all white or 80% or whatever the demographic was. Mine was 60 to 80% Hispanic. So I was like one of like 20 white kids. And so by in that doing so, it essentially caused me to, I didn't even know what that meant because I was like, there's just a bunch of kids that are named Xavier or Jose or whatever. And I'm just trying to get through it, whatever, it's like, it wasn't bad at all. Like I loved it. I loved being around people that were different. I love people around people who had different experiences, especially since we all love the same stuff. We all like Harry Potter. We all like X-Men. We all like, a lot of the video games and things like that. Yeah. But then like they became crappy. They were like, especially the women. Like you try to date someone as a white kid over there. It's like you don't have my big family ain't around. They're in Utah. And things like that. So
I know you're just getting up and you're waking up.
I know. I could have like this giant massive intro. Sorry, I got used to that.
Let's actually get to JJ here.
Yeah. So JJ, what is your thoughts on the idea of growing up back then, and how did it feel exploring that in form of narration like this?
When I started writing, I didn't know where I was going to go with this, right? And you start thinking of where to start. And if it's a memoir, and I was thinking autobiography before I knew the differences, and they're so minute that you could interchange autobiography and memoir. So I felt when I did an outline, I said, let me start from the beginning, because those things at the beginning of my life affected me, I think, molded some of my thoughts in life. First of all, as a kid, if you got the experience where my sisters and I are watching television, and I don't know if you got to that part where we put towels on our heads and walk like supermodels.
I know, I did. I thought it was adorable. I was like, this is great.
So as a child, I thought we were them. I didn't know racism.
Right.
I didn't know I was different. So as children, when we put the towels on our head, that was just the long hair, and we're just flashing the towels around and walking like models. I didn't differentiate myself between them and me. Yeah. You're so influenced by what you see on TV. So that's one thing. So your identity to you is caught up into this. And then as you grow up, and I went to the scene with the bathroom scene with my mom, and I couldn't use the bathroom. I didn't know. I just know my mom had the strangest look on her face. And she never explained to me what was going on. And then Dr. King came, and I had the privilege of hearing his speech. And after the incident with the lady on the bus, who happened to be white, and she embarrassed me so, I think I was my mouth was on the ground at 3.5. I was so thrown back by her is when I began to see racism at 3.5. So I processed it alone. That's the main thing. You process these things alone because as a child, you don't know what's going on. So as a child, I don't know what's going on. And as time goes on, you see, okay, the world doesn't see me or my family like we see us, which is, as you start going, we're a loving family. I didn't know I was poor. I didn't know any of the things that were going on. When I got outside of the home is when I experienced these things. And so watching Dr. King's speech was so powerful for me because he gave me that confidence that I lost through those experiences. So when you say, what was my thinking, my experience, it was what unfolded to me, if that answers the question.
Oh, most
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. So what approximately was it? Were you able to like be able to separate that like from social engineering, essentially social, because when you're young, because like we think social engineering is like only when you're on the internet, but it
Right.
really is everywhere. Like whether or not you interact with somebody and then they like plant a thing in your head because of what they said or something like that. When were you able to separate the pain and trauma of like, because like at one point after you learn what that is, the concept, the ugly concept of that of racism, you then have to sort through like, am I racist or what even is that, or were you able to at least identify a way of being able to see it as the way you want to versus how they were impressioning upon you?
It still goes back to Dr. King when he did the I Have a Dream speech that I got to see on television live with him doing it back then. So I
Okay.
separated out because he told us, don't ever let anybody make you feel less than. So
Yeah.
that began the road to, I looked at him like a father because it was like my mom couldn't explain what was going on. The world around me was in chaos. You know, at the time it was the 60s and they were fighting for civil rights. So it was at about right after his speech that I began to think, okay, something's wrong with the world and it's not us. And so you
Yeah.
begin to separate. But as far as when do you not allow it to affect you, the sad part is for me, can't speak for other African Americans or Black people, but for me, it never really goes away. You're always processing because systemic racism that you talked about has
Yeah.
been in my life throughout my life and still to
Yeah.
today. I run into encounters at the store. The people will totally ignore me or I'm in line. It's isolated, but when it happens, uh, it triggers something in me. You know how you have a furnace that's set on
Hmm.
low and then you keep piling the wood on it? I had an incident in California. I lived in California for 25 years. I had an incident and it was over yogurt. I was with my girlfriend at a yogurt shop and we were standing in line, and I have this in the book too. We were standing in line and there's a long line. It's probably about 15 people in front of us and she and I. As we go in to the line, as we move through, she's asking everyone in front of us, who's next? Who's next? And they're saying, I am, you know. And she gets to me and says, who's next? And I said, I am. And she looks to a white guy to confirm that I'm next. I lost it. I said, yogurt? I said, freaking yogurt. So my girlfriend
Yeah.
had to calm me down. And I told her, I said, are you serious? I mean, so these things just pile up. They happen throughout all our life. Every day, some things can happen. And even in California, I've had experiences. So you never really get over it. You just move through it. And you always constantly recheck yourself so that you don't get out of pocket, so that you stay stay level, so that you understand it's not me, it's them. And that's the
Hmm.
system we live in.
Yes,
That's
it is.
that's a
It-
concerning thing. Go ahead, Paul.
Concerning,
yeah.
yes.
No,
What they call them microaggressions.
yes, yes.
We
They
really
definitely,
do run into microaggressions every day. What happened is we never talked about it because when you're not valued, why does your voice matter? I even have incidences through my work experience back in the 70s, how they told all these jokes all the time, these racial jokes. And Black people were the brunt of them. I'm sitting in an office space. I ended up going to University of Arkansas, and I was working there, and they tell all these jokes in your presence as if you are not Black. I mean, but Black is the brunt of the joke. But they would actually say
Yeah,
the N word back then, or they would say it was awful.
I'm
It was
glad that
awful.
that
You
word
just
is
move
barely
through
used
it.
anymore.
I'm
I
so
mean,
glad we're out of the 60s and 70s. So microaggressions, as bad as they are, can be at least addressed and talked about. And we don't know how to get the message out that this is wrong because it's so ingrained. So we just have to we're still teaching.
right. And here's
yeah,
the sad part about it, Joyce. Black people have been talking about it and putting it out there and trying to say, hey, this is what's happening to me. This is what's happening to me. And they've been doing it and doing it and doing it. And people of my complexion are the ones that caused it. And it's going to take us to
Yes.
stand up to the people with our complexion that are doing it and telling them it needs to stop. That's what it's
yeah,
Yes. Thank you, Paul. I
yes.
believe that because if you don't value me, you're not going to listen to me. So you're absolutely correct, I feel.
Yes, absolutely, and all that. I address this really big in my book, The Red Herring Effect, and I talk about it repetitively. Did in spaces, not anymore, but in spaces, and it's a huge issue, and I never thought it was that bad until I was in Mississippi,
Mm,
back in the early '90s.
hmm
Um, I had encountered my first sundown town, which I'd probably encountered many of those without knowing what they were, but was finally educated as to what they are. And I have had a person of color in my vehicle and been pulled over and asked if I owned the vehicle because I had a person of color in my vehicle where I've been pulled over a lot. I had a lead foot in my youth and was never asked that. I was always asked registration, license, do you know what you did wrong, blah, blah, blah. The normal scenario of what's supposed to occur when you get pulled over, but it changes. And that resonated with me because in my youth, when I would watch like cops, and I would see them pull a black person over and they would say, do you own this vehicle? It all came back, it all registered. That's when it clicked for me that this is still a problem in this country. And then when I went to school and became, I was a bounty hunter for a while. And when I would hear the cops talk, so just the things that would come out of their mouth in relation to people of color, in relation to women, in relation to people with different backgrounds and that didn't match this. Um, this is why I addressed it in my book, because it's going to take people like myself to stand up and say, no, 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 that's wrong. That's wrong. You should not be doing that. That's wrong. That's wrong. And here's why, you know?
Yeah. We
So,
finally, um, as of when Mike Brown, it seems as if we all got that message you're saying, and we said, hey, we wash our hands of it. You guys started this, you figure it out. Because it's not us. We've tried too long. I mean, if civil
yes,
rights and protests and you're burning down the city and not kneeling to the flag and you're disowning things that don't represent you, and we're just trying to not disowning the flag, of course. What
right.
you're disowning the things that you say it represents, and you're not inclusive of us. What more can we do? We've tried to tell you every way possible. Finally, get to the point, at least for me. I'm speaking for me. I'm
Right.
washing my hands of that. I'm writing my memoir so that I can get better because that's what it was all about. It was about a cleansing, as my brother says, a cleansing.
Right. Hold that book back up. Let's get that book out there. We want to make sure people know about it.
It was, she had 13 siblings, if I remember
We
correctly.
are not our secrets.
Let's see if there you go. I think I
There we
got it in
go.
there.
We are not our
That's
secrets.
beautiful.
All right.
And what was it like writing it in general, by the way?
Painful, some parts, because it
I
was
can imagine.
a cleansing. I knew I had a lot of pain. I didn't know how the extent it had affected me, because usually people who are experiencing pain are the happiest people on earth. I was always helping people and counseling people, helping people, letting them make it through their lives and listening. And so when I actually, do you know, I didn't know I had experienced trauma, because now you're dealing with the racial issue that you brought up, right? But I had to deal with my father's issue from PTSD from coming out of the military, which changed him. My mother said that the military took my husband from me, and he became this tyrant, very domestic, violent man. And we had to deal with that. And so on top of all of that, I had to deal with that. So when I wrote it, I was getting that out of me, because all my life, even my brothers and sisters, the older ones, they would say when I try to tell my story, oh, it wasn't, it was, they would say it's worse when we were growing up. So I thought to
They minimized
myself,
it.
after hearing everybody, no, maybe I didn't experience trauma. And that's,
So they minimized it, causing you to like think. They caused me to think, oh, it's not that bad. It's normal. Like normalizing trauma, normalizing cyclical abuse, maybe even ritualistic abuse, depending on who he was when he got out of the military. Because that's something that my wife deals with her dad. Is they constantly say over and over again, oh, that's just how he's been for decades, and that's just how he is. He broke his head. That sort of, they always have a story for it. But that was another thing I wanted to cover. Like, are you okay? Like after reading like everything that's going on in the story.
You know what? I am, because here's the thing. With every book, you have to read it in its entirety. Because if you don't, then you would think, well, how can you be okay after that? I remember telling the first part, the very first chapter, and I would tell someone, and she would look, the lady I was telling, and she would say, how can you even make it through life after that? But it's like what everybody's saying, and I'm learning, your stress response system saves you. Anything that typically, not always, but your stress response system shuts it out. So mine did a great job of shutting all of that out until I turned like 48. And then at that point, I collapsed from work, life, all the things that had happened, experiences, divorce, things like that.
Yeah, and did your parents actually divorce, or did they like just kind of learn how to cope with each other's existence?
My mother was with my father for all of her life. They both died in matrimony.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
At least they died in some form of like maybe happiness.
Yes. In the book, I speak of that, is that I forgave him when I was in my 20s, because mom called me and I had left home, and she was saying what he was doing to her. So what I did was just dismiss it as, you know what, I dealt with that as a child. You have a choice to leave. In my mind at the time, you have a choice to leave. So I forgave him, because I thought it takes two to be in these situations. And then as she grew older and got Alzheimer's, he ended up caring for her. So during his care for her is when I totally forgave him, because I thought, okay, he's being paid back exponentially, because it's a lot of care involved in that. And he did a great job of caring for her with Alzheimer's. and she had Alzheimer's for a long time. And but the good thing is that he cared for her during this time, and they ended up being as happy as they could. She just was out of her element. She didn't know what was going on, but throughout her life, she went back to her childhood, which was very, very happy. And she would talk of her father often during her Alzheimer's, and she thought my dad was her father. So she died a happy life, and he took care of her, and he was he turned into a changed man. He actually told several of my brothers and sisters and myself that he loved us. And the military took him away. Like they said, they need to give more for PTSD, like medicines and different coping mechanisms that they really should help PTSD victims. I talked about that in the book. 22 veterans commit suicide daily, and we should do more. The country should be ashamed of itself for not helping more.
Yeah, it's something that Paul covers in Red Herring, I think.
Yes.
With like veteran health care and things like that.
Right. And at the end, I'll cover the suicide topic and all that. I've been doing that on all of my episodes. So as somebody who deals with that thought process on a daily basis, it really rings out to me, because suicide is a hard thing to talk about. It's a hard thing to deal with. And people people truly don't understand the mindset of somebody who is constantly thinking about it, you know. So we'll get to that towards the end. There was some other things that T-Paul, he does these wonderful, wonderful, awesome outlines and all that, you know, on how he wants the show to go. And one of the things that we didn't get to discuss, me and T-Paul, is that when you have a guest on and all that, it doesn't always go with the outline and all that. But some of the things that he put on there and all that, I wanted to, and he's got switching gears. What songs do you write, and what inspires you?
I was going to get to that part. Yes.
Yes, I am also a singer-songwriter, and I write based on society, because you think when you write, you sing and you songwrite, you look at what's out there and who made it, the superstars, you look at the great, and all of the songs mostly they're either mostly about love. So I write love songs, and then some songs, of course, are about pain. He wrote Heaven. Who was the guy that wrote Heaven for his son? One of the most beautiful songs I ever heard, but it's also sad. But I'm saying, so it's either pain or love, and that's where I fit. Mostly love, because that's what we are meant to be. That's what our driving force is. One day the world will figure that out, hopefully.
Yep.
And I have faith that they will, just like we do AI and all these wonderful things, put man on the moon. We have flying vehicles, cryptocurrency. I believe that if we focused on us, and Paul and you and both and all three of us are in this group, we know that love is the key and that we need to get there. So that's the faith that I have, that I write from the standpoint of love and the pain. I do have a song that I wrote. The very first song I wrote was about my mom's death. It's called Everything Goes On By. So love or pain or something that affects you greatly in your life. When I read about how to write great songs, they said when you lived and gone through hurt or pain, deep hurt or pain, is when you learn how to write.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Would you be okay with gracing us with a few lines?
I was going to be like, you want to share if you want?
Okay, everything goes on by is my first song I ever wrote. It was a girl at work, and she says, write about your pain about your mother. I had just started writing, and it goes, everything goes on by, everything goes on by, Seasons change, time escapes, soft cries, gentle breezes, wishful thinking. Everything goes on by, yet my heart remains the same. I skipped a lot, but
That
Beautiful,
was beautiful.
beautiful,
thank you.
beautiful.
I love your voice. It's great.
Thank
Like
you.
I like the melody of it, but I also like the way you carry it, within yourself and just how you express it. It's
You
great.
have
I love it.
beautiful voice.
Thank you.
Oh, you were graced. You were graced. I tell you, God, if there is a God, I'm an atheist, but whatever be the creator or whatever's out there that controls things, it knew not to give me a voice because I would have been a rock star. I would have been a rock star. And apparently, my purpose is elsewhere in life because I love a good voice, and you have a beautiful voice.
Thank you, Paul.
And I could feel the emotion in it, and I know exactly what you're talking about. You and I met in a space with Torch the Poet,
Yes.
and I don't know if you know this, but Torch is someone that basically he kind of saved my life in a way because he told me to go back to my writing, and I had just lost my wife. My wife and I were together for 23 years, and she passed away in January of 2022.
Sorry to hear that. My deepest condolences
Oh,
to you.
thank you. Breast cancer took her,
Oh,
and um,
mm,
Torch and I had a conversation and all that, and I started to put my words on paper. And the best poem I've ever written is an ode to my wife. So um, that pain and everything that you're talking about, that when you're feeling that and you have an outlet for that, and I think
yes.
one of the other reasons why you're able to survive this world as well as what you do is because you do have that outlet. You do have a place
Yes.
where you can put all that anger, sadness, frustration, love, joy, everything that pain. Oh my goodness. And pain is so many different levels. So I love it that oh my God, you've been graced, and now you can put that pain into those words that you've been graced with. There's probably a reason why you've been graced with such a beautiful voice, is because
Oh,
that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to put that pain in words for people like us.
oh, that's beautiful. And I heard your poem before and I just bawled off of it. It was beautiful, beautiful. I thought how precious, because I was in the space when you were telling Torch. He was hosting. I don't know if I was hosting with him, maybe, but it was just a wonderful uh tribute to him, and it was also a tribute to you and the strength that words have. Like you were
Yeah.
saying, it can cleanse us of that pain. It gives us an outlet, a place to put it. So when we're talking about all of this, it's to let people know the reason why we're talking about it. It can help you too release that, write about it, sing about it, draw
Yeah,
about it, do some
absolutely.
creative work about it.
Yes, yes. And that's what T Paul and I have done for like the last 3 episodes on here. We've talked about putting, your personal mental health traumas into writing and how you can utilize that in writing and whatever else. It doesn't have to be writing, it can be anything, whatever it is that you can just bring that to. So this is like one of the greatest tie-up interviews for what we've been talking about for the last 3 weeks. You know,
Yep.
mental health, because mental health is so important. And I haven't read your book yet, just from what we've been talking about and what your book is
It's
about.
beautiful.
This is about mental health issues and how to deal with it in the aspect of what's going on in the world and the traumas that are put upon people or a people and how it's dealt with. And
Yeah.
that's really, really important in this world. We also kind of talk about it on the other segment I have, the flow, which is Shadow Fox and Diana that T-Paul was talking about, because love. Imagine a world if love was the currency.
Wow. Can
Yeah,
you
that
imagine?
was something Diana had brought up on one of the shows too.
I love Diana and Shadow Fox. I can't say enough about them. They're so sweet. And the one thing is the things that affect my family affect all families except for well, even the racial elements, because they're the ones carrying it out. And that creates an unsettling in you. I think that
And
you will see the mass shooters that are
mhm.
out there, if they're the white ones, they have said that they were taught hate or they're members of these hate groups. And it turns oftentimes not on us, but at the schools
Mm-hmm.
of people just like them. So this hatred, teaching hatred, will never work. Teaching
Right.
something is different from you when we're all the same. Everything that happens to us affects all of us in the same way. It's just that some people don't know it. We all crave and want the same things and go about life in the same manners. We may have cultural differences in that, like we laugh about how invited to the barbecue. Everybody knows when you're invited to our barbecues, you're going to dance and play dominoes and whatever, some cards. They call them spades. And this is like not for everybody, but back in the day. And you're going to drink and you're going to dance and you're going to do the line dancing and all of that. And then when I was taken out of my environment at 17, I became a Jehovah's Witness. The book is very intrinsic because it goes into a lot of white environments I had. So that was what is unique about my experience. And I learned white culture. And I learned that we're the same. It's just these small, minor differences in how you're raised as far as the things you like. Like when you have a party, when they said I'm having a party, it was sitting around talking, someone to pull out a guitar and sing, and we're mostly talking. And when we say we're going to have a party, man, it's drinking and dancing and dominoes, and you're like, okay, nobody's talking, they're dancing and laughing and talking about each other, but it's all the same. It's love coming together to form bonds of people you love. It's no different.
Yes.
I
And
love how
go
your
ahead, TK.
frame of mind is about love. Like I love how, despite everything that I read in that small little part of the book that I was able to read so far, because my life gets busy, apologize. And I love how your frame of mind is all about love. Like that's how you've kind of cognitively reprogrammed your mind. Because despite the pain, despite all the crap that you got, like with the microaggressions and with all the bad experiences, and despite like how your dad was even about that same exact concept, despite the fact that he's on the receiving end, like I love how your frame of mind, the way you processed it yourself as a person, is love first, acceptance
Yes.
first, inclusion first. Because in all reality, you could easily have gone the other direction. And I love the fact that you didn't. I love the fact that you focused on healing. That's one of the things I had to say about that is that,
Beautiful.
about that. And Paul, you had something to say?
Yeah, it's funny because one of the things, I guess it's not really funny. It's this hatred that's out there in the world. No matter what the hatred is taught. Period.
Yes.
It's taught. Because make note, you said when you were 3.5, when you experienced that, you were taught that, and
Yes.
no matter what, children when you see them play and stuff like that, that they interact, they love each other, they don't know any of this kind of stuff. They're that color doesn't make a difference, religious backgrounds don't make a difference. They're playing and having fun. It's not until they're told there's a reason. In other words, they're being taught something. They're being taught that no, you can't play with that person because they blah blah blah, or you can't play with that person because their parents they don't believe what we believe, or you can't play with that person. Didn't you notice that the color of their skin is different? You can't trust them. You can't this. You can't that. It's all taught. It's
Yes.
all taught, and we need to get to a place to where we quit teaching that. Because if we quit teaching it, then it's no longer learned. And if it's
Hello?
not learned, then it no longer exists.
I have hope.
Oh, I do
because
too.
you can learn, you can relearn, and you can unlearn.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. You know,
One of my favorite
That's
lyrics in
beautiful,
Epic
by the way,
Song,
what
Learn
you
to
just said,
Unlearn.
Paul. That's beautiful and right on point.
well, thank you. You know,
Yeah.
I spent 3.5 years down in Mississippi. Okay. I'm a casino man. I started in the riverboats. And I opened up a couple casinos down in Mississippi, working down there. And excuse me, in the 3.5 years that I was down there, it was the best and worst 3.5 years of my life.
Wow.
Okay. A lot of great things happened for me in Mississippi, and a lot of bad things happened when I was in Mississippi.
Mm.
I saw a lot of things that I wish I could unsee. I had friends that I thought were friends that weren't friends, that one took me to a white supremacy meeting. Now, to be in that position, and even though my skin matches what they want, my beliefs did not.
Wow.
And to have that
Right.
fear of not being able to speak up about it, because I would have been hung out in the bayou.
Definitely.
Okay. And it's also where I went to places down south that most white people just don't go, because they're scared. I tell you, I've had some of the best food down in Mississippi. I have made met some of the greatest people down in Mississippi.
Wow.
I've gone to some of the best Black gospel churches down in
Ooh.
Mississippi, where
Yes.
I could walk in and be accepted without anybody ever saying a word. Whereas going to another church and a Black person walks in,
Ah.
they're looked at and looked down upon. And when you see this kind of stuff and you witness this kind of stuff, it opens your eyes to things. Okay. And I've learned throughout my life.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
I've lost volume.
Yeah.
We can
You
hear
can hear
you.
me?
Yep.
We can hear you just fine.
How do I find volume again? I had a call that came in and it took my volume away.
Can you hear us? Can you hear us?
Roger, Roger.
Okay. Can you hear us now?
Hey, you unmuted my mic, it says.
Yeah. Can you hear us?
I can't hear. I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm gonna
Technical difficulties.
I'm going to the private chat.
You're in the show. Let me try some things on my end. I'm just going to touch, but I don't see any settings or anything, but I'm just going to touch my screen. And it says my mic is on.
Okay. Can you hear us?
Yeah, it says my mic is on at the bottom.
Can you hear what I'm saying right now?
Yeah,
This
she
is
can't
terrible.
hear us. She can't hear us.
Well, what do we do now? I can't hear.
Go to the here. Private chat.
Let me put my phone on silent. Hopefully that doesn't happen yet. Muted, mic unmuted.
And come.
Okay.
In.
Can I go out and come back in?
Yep.
Yeah.
Go out and come back in.
Go out and come back in. Okay.
There we go.
I was trying to find a way to translate it to her and be like, yeah, do this thing.
Yeah, no. Again, once you lose that connect and all that, and I've had that happen with other people and all that, where once you get like a call that comes in, it messes up your audio, and then you got to go out and come back in. Yeah. So, no, this is a great conversation and all that. So let's get a little.
No, I love it. I love it so far.
Yes.
I was actually wanted to cover her being an executive producer because that was I saw that on her one day.
Let's go into that next.
Okay, I'm back.
Right. Can you hear us now?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. Yeah. Sometimes when you get a call in on your phone, it'll do that. It'll silence this, and then you can't come back into this. So you'll have to go out and come back in. So,
Woo!
all right.
And I did put it on silent. I didn't have my phone on silent either.
That's all right.
All righty.
That's all
Sorry
right.
about that, audience. Sorry about that, Paul and T. Paul.
No worries. No worries. So anyways, I learned a lot when I was down there, and it opened my eyes up to a lot of things. And then, of course, the politics in the
Excuse
last.
me. May I ask you,
Yes.
if you don't mind, unless
I
it's
don't mind.
too graphic, what were those white supremacist meetings like?
Oh my God, that was
Yeah,
just
killed the cat.
that was evil. It's
Just
evil.
a bunch of evil.
Well, what they do is they blame people of color for everything. The reason why we don't have jobs is because they take them. The reason why we can't get jobs is because people have to give it to them. So the system is broken too. You know, it comes back to that. The laws are being written and all that, and they're giving them more rights than us. You know, and that's the mentality and all that. And
what year was that?
That would have been 93.
93. So in the 90s, when they're saying there's no more racists, this is happening in the 90s. We know it's happening today too, but I'm saying they were outwardly having meetings. Was it a bunch? Was it huge or small?
God, yeah. No, there was a lot of people there and all that.
Was it women or just men?
Primarily men. The majority were men. I'd say probably about 90 to 95% were men. There would be a few women there. And those women were treated as if they were servants. They were the ones that were doing up all the food and drinks and stuff like that.
So they were just there to serve.
They were there to serve the men. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of
about 200.
Yeah, I'd say at least.
Wow, that's a big crowd. Yeah. Okay.
One of the things that
I was curious. I didn't know anybody had gone, and you inadvertently, like you said, ended up there, and one of the worst experiences. But it is good to know someone, because at a later time, we'll talk about that. But I don't want to bring their spirit into this, like you're saying.
Right.
What a crazy experience that was.
Oh, I'm telling you.
Yeah, the confusion of like the culture that they try to introduce, that they're always trying to bring up and level up and then lower everything else down, is the idea that women are somehow, when women and children are somehow less than the men.
Patriarchal.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's like this concept and notion for some reason, and I have to deal with it every day. Like I live in it right now because the house we're living in is very much in line with that way of thinking. And so I'm constantly fighting it in more personal sense. And it's been like that for like over a year now, where
What's that?
Where does T-Paul live?
Utah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's more diverse than it's more diverse than previously thought than what people would expect it to be. But there is still that line of thinking that frustrates me to no end. That somehow people of color are less. Somehow people of color are the reason for the bane of someone's existence, even if that person made mistakes and was dumb themselves. It's people, women, and children are somehow meant to stay in the kitchen and do all the chores, and the children are best seen and not heard, like that sort of thing. Like I just
like what I grew up with. Then my father thought like that. My father thought, that women. Well, I don't know how he actually thought. I can tell you what happened. My mom had 13 kids. He threw away birth control pills, and he would treat her awful, and he treated boys different from girls.
Yep.
Boys are allowed to do this, girls don't. But you have that society, and that went back through all cultures. We still fight for women's rights. That's a whole nother thing, and how they treat us and everything. So it's good to know that you two are fighting against all of this.
Right. A lot of this
Yeah, no, it's a daily fight.
a lot of this comes in from religious teachings. It's a lot of the WASP mentality, the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant work ethic that goes into that, and that's where a lot of this mentality comes from.
Yes.
And it's been taught for centuries, you know. And again, somebody has to be lesser than me. And that's how the mentality is. Somebody has to be lesser than me. And any problems that I have is because of the lesser.
And they constantly deny that today, that that's not their premise, but hey.
Yeah. Oh, but it is. It is. It's the same culture, same mentality. And here's the thing. We're only seeing it more now because they've been given that free reign to say how they feel. They've been they've allowed themselves to open up with this mentality.
Yeah, they say they're holding back their rights.
Right, because you see, this guy that I thought was a friend, I had known him for over a year and never knew this aspect about him.
Mm-hmm.
It was never in any way, shape, or form ever shown to me that he had this mentality. And
until he just took you to that,
because he thought I was like him.
Wow, just because of your powder.
He thought I was like him.
Know, I laughed because I was thinking, like, their rights. And let me say this: there's nothing funny about it. I was laughing at their right to hurt, to say less than, to call you whatever they want, to feel like they are. I personally feel that when they say white nationalists, it's just an offshoot of that. I heard that. I'm not going to get into politics because they are, like my brother said, and I put in the book, they are victims too.
Yes.
Generational cycles. That's what the book is about.
Yes.
Generational cycles that we're all under, that we've all trying to come out of. We're on autopilot. In our thoughts
we are.
Feelings and going through our lives, and we don't know how much this affects our families.
Right. And you know, and the part about where you said that they are victims too, they are. Yes. And they would never look at themselves as a victim in that aspect. They look at themselves as being victimized in other ways.
Yes.
And I always forget the guy's name. He's like a blues musician and a preacher. He's a black man that he seeks out members of the KKK, and he ends up living with them and creating a friendship with them. And at the end, he ends up taking their robes, you know, because he's converted their thought process.
Yes.
Into seeing that he's not what they were taught.
Yes.
You know,
I often thought of that. I thought there's no way, because me being in these white environments, I've helped a lot of my white friends who that I work with or that I am really friends with for years, who have said things, right? And they say whatever it is that they're saying that's off. And I've asked them a series of questions. Rather than get mad, this is something I want to carry on to us and to everybody. When someone says something out of pocket, try not to get angry.
Right.
Ask them, why do you say that?
Yes.
They're going to have to explain that statement. And you best believe they can't even explain it.
No,
half of the time, they cannot explain. And when they do, you just continue to ask those questions. Most of them end up saying, I don't know why I said that. I guess somebody told me that. And then we can have the conversation. But that simple thing, everybody, this is for everybody. When someone says something really out of the world or that has no basis, ask them, why do they feel that way? And they're going to have to explain it and watch what happens.
Yes.
You know how to accidentally start a fight at my family gathering sometimes. doing exactly that, asking them why they said a certain thing or acted a certain way, and then questioning them, and then they're like,
You know, I was in Northern California, and I had this guy doing some work for me, and he had used the N word in conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, why would you say that? Whoops, did we lose JJ? Oh, there she is.
That's
Okay.
Oh, at
true.
least I got my mic.
All right. Anyways,
Okay.
I'd asked him, I go, why did you say that? And he goes, well, they all need to go back home. They all need to go back to their country. And I go, so why do I need to go back to, where is it you're saying I need to go back to? Well, not you. I go, well, that word that you used and the terminology that you used describes me also. And he's like, but you're white. And I go, well, yeah, but my grandfather was black. He's from Nigeria.
Did he faint?
Huh? He just
Did he
goes,
faint?
but you don't look like them. And I
I
go,
can't take it.
but I am them. It's just that my complexion, I got robbed. And he's just like giving me this look. And I go, yeah, I got that pale, ugly look like you. I go, did you know that black don't crack? I go, I would look 20 years younger. And you're telling me I need to go back to my country? What country is that? I was born here. And he goes, but you're white. And I go, no. I go, I'm a lot of things, but I'm not just one thing. I've
Yeah.
got Irish, I've got Sicilian, I've got German, I've got Nigerian. I've got so many different things. I don't know what all I am, and nor do I care. Why do you care?
Yes. What did he say, Paul, to you after
He
that?
didn't. He left. He didn't come back to work.
He's like, I'm out, quit. I'm a head out.
Because I didn't get angry. Like you said, you don't get angry about it. You know, you have to question it. And you're absolutely
I wish
right.
people would
You
know.
question them and you question them. Why do you think that way? Why do you talk that way?
Yes.
Why do you have to look at things that way? Because it's not true. We are all from the motherland of Africa. When you go into our DNA, we all originally come from Africa.
Thank you.
So we're all from there.
And in the United States, you remember the McCains, the black McCains, the white McCains?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's the United States. I guarantee you, when people do their lineage, their ancestry, they'll be shocked. Most black people that were to say that they are not whatever white or whatever, it would be it would behoove me if they were not in their ancestry from all over as well. You know, that's the United States. It was intrinsic because of the things that were happening. And then I just remember it was so hilarious when the McCain ran, and there was this whole family that came out that was by his uncle or his brother or someone, and they actually were the real deal. And it was a whole slew of the McCains that were black. And I thought, that's this. Hello, welcome to America.
Also, guess what's in Africa too? The very top of the continent, because it's not a country. There's like freaking lots of countries in Africa. The very top of the country, Egypt. Like
Yeah.
that's where a lot of religious stories come from, anyways. Egypt and across the river there in Jerusalem, and like I don't think a lot of people, especially people in America, really put that thought into place. And like, by the way, your ancestors, your ancestors, your ancestors, like you just point at everybody and be like, by the way, all whatever your pigmentation aside, y'all came from the same freaking place.
and your Christianity is based on Hebrew.
Yep.
They're gonna
Yep.
say,
Yeah, they would just be like, ah!
And you know, it's funny because like the war that's going on now, like in Israel and all that, the Israel Palestine thing and all that. you're talking. It's Abrahamic religions.
Yeah.
Okay. Doesn't matter if it's you're reading the Torah, you're reading the Quran, or you're reading the Holy Bible. They all have Moses. They all have Abraham. They're they're
Oh,
they're all basically the same. They all
yeah.
come from the same origins. The a lot of the stories that are in there come from like the Code of Hammurabi, and other different sects of Taoism and Taoism and Confucianism and stuff like that. And when I see that this is the only religion, this is the only blah blah blah, and it's just like, have you ever read the book? I'm always amazed at how many people that claim to be from a sect of religious background that have never read the book.
Yes.
And when I start pointing out things in the book, well, that's not from my book. Oh, no, it is. It's on this page. It's right here. Read this. Please explain that to me. And again, when you start pointing out the ignorance of people, and that's what it comes down to, is softly doing it. You can't be just calling people names or something like that. It has to be done with love. It has to be done with care, and it has to be done in a way that you're actually wanting to educate somebody so that they can see things in a different way, and that they can start this new journey on their own.
That's right.
And that's the goal, is to plant the seed so that they can start a brand new journey and learn more about themselves and make the decision to the things they don't like about themselves, they decide to get rid of, because you can't make a person change.
No.
All you can do is plant the seed.
Yes.
Yeah, provide a gateway.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I stopped having political and religious conversations with people because that had their minds already made up. If you're open to, let's say you give a thought and I give a thought and we can have a conversation about it, then we can do that. But some people now have their own beliefs. No matter what you say, that's how they are.
Right.
And I say, okay, more power to you, but I'm going to try and help you if you allow me. And when I say help you, however you are is fine with me. So when I say help you see that you don't have to say discriminate against other people. Like my way is the only way, when it's everybody follows the same Bible. All these different sects have the same Bible in their hand.
Yeah.
With few passages changed. To me, I think it's for money that all these sects were formed, because now I can get this extraordinarily large amount of sum of money by having my own sect here. And so I'm going to branch out, because here's this one scripture that says this. So I can go and form my own organization based on this one or two scriptures that vary, but I've got the same Bible.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We definitely need to have you come back on here. We can have more talk on this.
Yes, I'll come back.
I haven't even covered everything that I had in the outline. Like we've hit like some of the bullet points and some of the highlights, but it really was just the way it caused a ripple effect, because suddenly we have also some other stuff to talk about. So definitely need to do this again sometime.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll definitely come back, because we touched upon the first 3 chapters, I think.
Yeah.
Because there's other meat to it. So perhaps after you guys have read it, and then we could get into it again after that, if that would be okay.
Definitely.
Okay.
And I like I said, there's so many of these aspects that I would love to talk about, and I love to have people on here. And not only that, I've also got another show called Democratic Philosophy. I'd like to get you on there also. We can get more into the political aspects of it, and talk about the things that we can do to make change, to make this a better world. And I'd also like to get you on the flow with Shadow Fox and go more of the spirituality, love aspect, the flow of energy, which is love,
Okay.
and go that route also with it, because there's
Okay.
so many avenues that we can talk on this in so many different ways. Me, I love these conversations because
I do too when it's like-minded. Let
yeah,
me preference that.
yes,
I
well,
love like-minded. Or you don't have
I
to
feel
think
you.
like me. Just let us have a conversation.
right, and that's the thing. I
Yes.
like to educate people, and I think that you have a lot of history and information and knowledge that can be brought out so that people can grow and become better human beings. I just I know you have that power, you have that essence. You're just a wonderful human being, and I want people to see that and feel that and know,
Oh,
so I
oh, that's
You
so
have a
really,
beautiful voice.
yes,
thank you.
and a
Thank you.
beautiful voice.
And you know what? I enjoyed today with you and T-Paul also. I mean, it's been tremendous because it doesn't feel like an interview. It seems like we're in our living room just chatting with each other.
Yes, and
Oh
that's what
hell
we
yeah.
try to do. That's what we try to do. We try to make it to where everybody can come in and have a say. Um, the whole idea of in the moment is to get everybody's voice out there. Everybody has a voice, and everybody deserves to be heard. I don't care
Yeah.
who you are, where you're from. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. I want that conversation, and as long as you're going to come in good faith and have a conversation, my door is open, and that's what I look for.
That's why everybody loves you, Paul.
Yeah,
Well,
no, it's Paul is one of the best parts of Twitter, and now Paul's not even on Twitter.
He's got,
okay. Hey, I'm on
you know what?
Instagram. I'm on TikTok. I'm on all these other platforms. You can find me there.
I had to tease you.
I can't
I
even,
had to
and we
tease
can't
you.
even vouch for you because you're hacked. But try that little tip. Hopefully, you can get back on.
I look at it this way: whatever path I have been set on, and again, however I'm being guided, whatever the reason is, it's destined for me to no longer be on Twitter. I don't need Twitter. Okay, I don't need it. I've got a second book that I'm getting ready to put out. I've got these other platforms that I can go on. And quite frankly, I was spending about 12 hours a day on Twitter. That now I have free to explore other platforms. And here's the thing: I didn't work on my other platforms. I don't have near as many followers on them. Some I don't even think I got a couple hundred yet. Others just maybe a couple thousand. So here I am. I'm without Twitter, which was my big account, 10,000 followers. And now I got these other ones. And it's just like, what did I do with them? Nothing. Well, why didn't I? Well, because I had Twitter. Well, now I don't have Twitter. Well, I
Right.
can put the work into these other ones and I can make them just as valuable. So
Yes.
that's the
Absolutely.
route I'm going. So for me, it's
Good
not
for you.
real. 3 years ago, I would have been just stomach and knots like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I don't have Twitter anymore. Now I'm just like, I don't need Twitter.
Good for
And
you.
let's face it. Let's face it. If we had more than just Twitter, then we would have been able to get Joyce involved even sooner.
Yes, 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 I know. So I'm going to be exploring other avenues and I'm going to continue doing my YouTube broadcast here because, that this, and again, I may not have a huge following, but it's growing. And one day it'll get up there. And one day I might be just a living room name. And then again, I might go the rest of my life with just 270 some subscribers and just do this. And I'm going to be happy.
Hello. That's what I heard.
It's all
Don't
about happiness.
after, don't go after from somebody that's very successful. Just said that yesterday. Continue doing what you love, and the rest will come.
Yeah. Yeah. I am happy doing what I'm doing, and that's all that matters. And with that, before we close out the show, I'm going to put up for those that are having any kind of mental trauma or anything, the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, dial 988 or call 1-800-273-TALK. I, as someone who has these dark thoughts and deal with these thoughts on a daily basis due to the pain that I live in. I know that sometimes, you know, you need somebody to reach out to. And if friends and family aren't there, please call that hotline and talk to somebody. Talk. Find that purpose, because I
Yeah.
mine, and those thoughts are not going to beat me. I'm going to keep going because I have purpose.
We've
Yes,
got
Paul.
work to do.
You
Yep, we've
definitely
got
have
work to do.
purpose. And I'm glad you are overcoming, and that you're cognizant and you work on it every day, and you're surrounded by people who love you, and you're so open and honest. I feel that's half of the battle, is to talk about it.
It is.
Oftentimes when we hide it in there is the real problems when something happens. So you talk about it, you do what you're doing, and you have a perfect this podcast, right?
Yes, yes. It's a
Yeah, it's a perfect podcast. I watched it before several of your shows, and I love it. I love it. You're doing great work.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. And, you know, whatever it is that's going on, my purpose and all that is to bring love and light to people, and hopefully give them a different perspective on life, you know. And if there's somebody that needs help, or there's somebody that just doesn't see things the same way that I see things, maybe I can open them up to just a new way of thinking. And if I can, great. And if not, you know, I'm putting myself out there, and I've gone through some things as everybody else has. Everybody goes through something. We all do,
Yes.
and it's how we deal with it, which allows us to continue to move forward.
Yeah.
And that's why I put that hotline up there, is because sometimes people don't think that they have a way forward. And
It's like we were on the same wavelength too, because he got the first outline from me for this new series, and I told him like it might be a 3-parter for right now, and then we might just like keep going on it. And he's like, no, I love it, I love it, I love it. And then like he threw up the hotline thing in the first episode at the very beginning, but then he started just moving it to the back so that way it's not too overwhelming visually. And like we were both kind of discussing that and everything, and I just like the fact that we're able to talk about things that people typically would shy away from. Healing.
Right.
Like, I know that one would say, well, is it a trauma that you're terrified? I'm like, no, no, people are terrified of healing. They're terrified of forward. They're terrified of being able to move forward in life, of being able to let go of the thing that gives them comfort. And they're like, wait, what do you mean by pain gives them comfort? It does, because negativity, pain, those things that register in our head, we become so adapted to it, so comfortable with it, that it's almost like a comfortable lie. It's like this own form of self sabotage and self deception, and we don't want to move forward from there. And then you can be miserable and comfortable being miserable. So, what we're doing with this podcast is we're talking about writing, but we're also talking about ways of coping with and dealing with healing
yes,
and trauma.
yes.
Excellent.
All right. I want to thank you guys for being here today. And everyone, please buy Joyce's book. We Are Not Our Secrets. Hold that book up one more time. We Are Not Our
Wait,
Secrets.
Beautiful.
I get it. I don't know which way it goes.
Yeah, move
There.
it closer to
Yeah,
your face. There you go.
closer to your face a little bit. There we
Yep.
go. There we go.
Yep.
There.
There we go. I have the same
Beautiful.
problem. I have the same problem.
Someone could
We are
freeze
not our
frame that and then
secrets.
make it that unique profile picture.
Yep. Make sure you get that book, and don't leave after we go off wire. Stay on. And remember, everyone, be kind, be happy,
Bye. Thanks for having me.
and may good things come your way. Thank you. Thank you.
Well,